Welcome back, everyone. Today's deep dive is going to be all about wood,
Wood,
but not just any wood.
right?
We're going to be talking about wood's incredible journey from the forest all the way to the furniture and the structures we use and see every day.
It is amazing how much we just sort of take wood for granted.
It really is.
Yeah.
Especially when you think about all the steps involved in getting it from a tree standing in a forest
Right.
to a beautifully crafted piece of furniture or
Correct.
even a house.
Exactly.
We've got some really fascinating sources for this deep dive today.
Oh, yeah.
We've got some articles and guides about woodworking tools and techniques, safety procedures.
Very important.
Very important, yes.
Yes.
The mysteries of plywood and laminate,
Oh, those are fun.
and even a peek into how wood is graded.
Oh, wow.
So it's going to be quite the adventure.
I'm excited.
I'm excited too. So to kick things off, let's talk about that first step in the wood's journey, felling trees.
Yes. That dramatic moment when a mighty tree meets its destiny.
I was reading about the different methods of felling trees.
Yes.
Sectional felling
Mm-hmm.
and systematic felling.
Right.
And I have to admit, sectional felling sounds a bit intense.
Yeah, well, it's usually used when you're dealing with softwoods like pine that grow in these vast uniform stands.
Okay.
It's really all about efficiency because, you think about all the forests that are used for construction lumber.
Mm-hmm.
You need a method that's going to get the job done quickly and effectively.
So it's like clearing out a whole neighborhood of trees in one fell swoop.
In a way, yes, you're removing a large section of trees, often in a very organized and systematic way.
Okay.
But systematic felling is a different approach altogether.
Okay.
This method is much more selective, and it's often used for hardwoods, like oak and maple, which tend to grow a bit slower.
Yeah.
And they're often found in mixed forests, where you have all sorts of different species growing together.
Right.
So it's about choosing those best candidates, the ones that are going to provide the best quality lumber.
So it's like choosing the best students for an elite woodworking academy.
Huh. I like that analogy, but it's true. It's about selecting those trees that have reached maturity and are ready to fulfill their destiny.
And this more selective approach also helps to ensure that the forest ecosystem remains healthy and diverse.
Exactly. It's about responsible forest management.
So once these carefully selected trees are down,
Yeah.
what's the next step in their transformation?
Well, they're transported to a sawmill where they're debarked,
Mhm.
which is essentially removing the bark, and then they're sawn into various sizes and shapes.
And this is where those different sawing methods come in, right?
Exactly. And the way the wood is sawn has a huge impact on the final product in terms of its look, its strength, and even how it behaves over time.
I was reading about plane sawing,
Yes.
quarter sawing,
Mhm.
and rift sawing, and I'll admit those terms sound a bit like dance moves to me.
Ah, I can see that. But in woodworking, these terms describe how the log is cut in relation to the growth rings of the tree. So, plane sawing, for example, is the most common and cost-effective method.
Mm-hmm.
But because it cuts through those growth rings at an angle,
Okay.
the resulting boards can be prone to warping or cupping as they dry.
So that's why some furniture pieces over time can start to look a bit wonky.
Exactly. You're essentially fighting against the natural tendency of the wood to move and change shape.
So if I see a piece of furniture that's starting to twist and warp, I can blame it on plane sawing.
Well, not always. There are other factors that can contribute to wood movement, like humidity and temperature changes.
Right.
But plane sawing does increase the likelihood of warping or cupping, especially if the wood isn't properly dried and seasoned.
Got it. So what about quarter sawing? How does that differ from plane sawing?
Well, with quarter sawing, the log is cut in a way that produces boards with a straighter grain pattern.
Okay.
So the growth rings are running more perpendicular to the face of the board,
Okay.
and this makes the boards much more stable.
Interesting. So I bet that makes quarter sawn wood highly prized for certain applications where that stability is really crucial.
You're absolutely right. It's often favored for things like musical instruments because you don't want a guitar neck, for example, to start warping and twisting.
Right.
That would definitely affect the sound quality.
I can only imagine.
And then there's rift sawing, which is kind of the gold standard of sawing methods.
Oh.
It's the most expensive and time-consuming method,
Okay.
but it produces the most consistent and linear grain pattern. And it's really beautiful.
I bet.
You often see it used in high-end furniture and flooring.
So it's like the Rolls Royce of wood.
Huh. That's a great way to put it. It's definitely the premium option.
So from the moment that tree is felled, these decisions about how to saw the wood are already setting the stage for its future destiny.
Exactly. It's like choosing a career path for the wood.
I love that. It's like Are you going to be a sturdy table egg, or are you going to be the resonant soundboard for a violin?
Exactly. The way the wood is sawn determines its potential.
But even after all this careful selection and sawing, those seemingly perfect boards can still have their quirks, right?
Oh, absolutely. Wood is a natural material, and it's full of surprises.
I remember the sources mentioning things like knots, checks, and even those intriguing peck and grub holes.
Ah, yes. Those pesky imperfections that can add character to the wood.
Or drive a woodworker crazy?
Well, it depends on the woodworker. Some embrace those imperfections, while others see them as challenges to overcome.
I've always been fascinated by those little imperfections like knots and those peck and grub holes.
Yeah.
They almost tell a story, don't they?
They do. It's like reading the history of the tree in those little markings.
Peck and grub holes sound like characters from a children's book.
Ah, they do sound a bit whimsical.
But what are they exactly?
Well, peck is caused by a type of fungus that attacks the wood.
Okay.
And it appears as these brown spots or streaks. It doesn't necessarily weaken the wood, but it can definitely affect the appearance, especially if you're going for a clean, uniform look.
And those grub holes.
Yeah.
Are they literally holes left by grubs?
They are. There are those tunnels created by those burrowing insects.
Oh, wow.
And they can affect the strength of the wood if they're large or numerous.
Okay.
But sometimes, those little imperfections can actually add character to a piece, especially in rustic or reclaimed wood furniture.
I love the look of reclaimed wood. It's like each piece has its own history written in its knots and imperfections.
It's true. It gives the wood a sense of age and character.
And then, of course, there are knots, which are those hard, often darker areas where branches once grew.
Right.
They can add visual interest.
Yeah.
But I know they can also make the wood more prone to splitting.
Exactly. It's because the grain direction changes abruptly at a knot, which can create a weak point in the wood.
So it's like a little rebellion in the otherwise orderly grain pattern.
It's a great way to think about it.
So how do woodworkers know what they're getting when they buy lumber?
Well, that's where wood grading comes in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a system for classifying lumber based on its quality and appearance.
Okay.
And it considers things like the number and size of knots, the presence of other defects like those peck and grub holes,
Yes.
and the amount of clear, usable area on a board.
So it's kind of like grading eggs.
Yeah.
You've got your grade of lumber that's practically perfect, and then your, shall we say, more rustic grades.
That's a good analogy. For hardwoods, the top grade is typically FAS, which stands for firsts and seconds.
Okay.
And this is the lumber that's highly sought after for furniture making and other applications where appearance is really important.
I bet that comes with a premium price tag, too.
It does. The lower grades have more defects, and they're usually used for applications where appearance isn't as critical, like framing or structural work.
It's fascinating how much goes into classifying lumber.
It is.
It's like each board has its own resume outlining its strengths and weaknesses.
Ah. I love that. It's true. And knowing how to read that resume is essential for any woodworker.
So we've journeyed from the forest to the lumber yard,
We have.
explored the intricacies of wood grading.
Yes.
But before we move on to the actual woodworking, there's one more question I've always had.
Okay.
How is lumber actually measured and sold? Is it like buying fabric by the yard?
Not quite. Lumber is typically measured and sold in board feet, which can be a bit confusing at first.
Board feet.
Yeah.
I've definitely heard that term before,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll admit I'm not exactly sure what it means.
So a board foot is basically a volume measurement.
Okay.
It's the equivalent of a piece of lumber that's 1 inch thick, 12 inches wide, and 12 inches long.
Okay.
So if you can picture that, that's one board foot.
So it's not just about the length or width of the board, but also its thickness.
Exactly. It takes all 3 dimensions into account.
Okay.
And there's a handy formula for calculating board feet.
Whoa.
It's the thickness in inches times the width in inches times the length in feet. And then you divide that whole thing by 12.
Okay, so it's a bit of a mental math workout.
It can be, but once you get the hang of it, it becomes second nature.
So if I had a board that was 2 inches thick, 6 inches wide, and 12 feet long, that would be 12 board feet.
You got it. That's exactly right.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get the hang of this.
Good. It's a fundamental concept in woodworking, especially when you're estimating costs,
Right.
making sure you have enough lumber for your project.
So we've gone from the forest to the lumber yard, explored the mysteries of wood grading, and even tackled board feet.
We have. It's been quite a journey so far.
What?
Now it's time to take those rough sawn boards and transform them into something usable.
Okay, let's do it. This deep dive is getting more exciting by the minute.
I agree. I can't wait to dive into the world of jointers, planers, and all those fascinating woodworking machines.
Bring on the sawdust?
Huh. Before we get to those big, exciting machines, though,
Mm-hmm.
remember those intriguing lumber defects we were talking about?
Yeah, those pecky, grubby, knotty bits.
Exactly. Well, turning those rough sawn boards into something beautiful and usable involves addressing those imperfections.
So it's not just about shaping the wood, but also refining its, well, character.
Exactly. And that's where a tool like a jointer comes in.
Oh yeah, the jointer.
This powerful machine is all about creating those perfectly flat surfaces
Okay.
and those nice square edges on a board,
Yeah.
which are essential for creating strong, stable joints later on.
You know, I've always been a little bit intimidated by jointers.
Really?
Those sharp blades spinning at high speed.
I know.
It's like something out of a horror movie.
Huh. I can understand that, but when used correctly, a jointer is an incredibly precise and efficient tool.
I know. I just have to get over my fear.
It has a rotating cutter head with these incredibly sharp blades, and it just shaves off thin layers of wood, removing any imperfections.
So it's like giving the board a super smooth facial.
Huh. I like that. That's a great analogy.
And once one face of the board is flat, you can use the jointer to square up one edge, making sure it's perfectly straight and at a 90-degree angle.
That's the key.
For those stable and predictable joints.
Absolutely. The jointer really lays that foundation for precision in woodworking.
Makes sense, but what about the thickness of the board?
Ah, good question.
Those rough-sawn boards are hardly ever uniform.
You're right, and that's where the planer comes in.
The planer, okay.
Another powerful machine with a rotating cutter head.
Okay.
But its job is to create a board with a uniform thickness.
I see.
So you just feed the board through.
Yeah.
And the blades just shave off thin layers until it reaches your desired thickness.
Oh, so that's how you get those perfectly consistent pieces for furniture or cabinets where everything has to fit together so precisely.
You got it.
So the jointer and the planer, they're like the dynamic duo of woodworking.
I like that. They are.
The jointer creating those flat surfaces and square edges.
Yep.
And then the planer making sure everything is the same thickness.
Exactly. And together they let you turn those rough, uneven boards into precise, workable pieces.
It's like taking raw ingredients and prepping them for a gourmet meal.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so now we've got our lumber prepped.
Yes.
And it's all nice and smooth.
Ready to go?
Time to start thinking about how to join those pieces together.
That's right. And that brings us to the fascinating world of joinery.
Joinery. This is where the real artistry of woodworking comes in, isn't it?
I think so.
It's about so much more than just gluing or nailing pieces together.
Absolutely.
It's about creating these strong and beautiful and sometimes incredibly intricate connections.
It's like a puzzle.
It is.
Figuring out how these pieces fit together in the best possible way.
Exactly. And one of the most important things to consider when choosing a joint is grain direction.
Absolutely. Grain direction is crucial.
Okay, but I'll admit, I'm a bit fuzzy on why it matters so much.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like the wood is going to, unravel if the grain isn't aligned, right?
Huh. Well, not exactly.
Well, okay.
Think about it this way.
Yeah.
Wood grain is kind of like bundles of tiny straws all running the length of the board.
Okay, little straws.
Oh, those straws are the wood fibers.
Right.
They give the wood its strength.
Okay.
When you create a joint, you want to make sure those grain directions in those two pieces of wood are aligned, or at least complementary.
I see.
This just creates a much stronger, more stable connection.
So it's like making sure all the straws are running in the same direction.
Exactly.
So they're supporting each other.
Right.
Rather than working against each other.
Exactly.
Like those team building exercises.
Oh, yeah.
Where everyone has to pull the rope in the same direction to move forward.
If you're pulling in different directions, you're not going to get very far.
Exactly. So what happens if you can't align the grain perfectly?
Well, some joints are more forgiving than others.
Okay.
Some joints rely on interlocking shapes to create a really strong bond,
Okay.
even if the grain isn't perfectly aligned.
I'm thinking about those dovetail joints.
Yes, dovetails are a classic example.
They're so impressive.
They're beautiful.
They're like little interlocking fingers.
Exactly. They're a type of positioned joint.
Positioned, okay.
Meaning that the shape of the joint itself helps lock those pieces of wood together.
Got it.
Yeah.
And I remember the sources mentioned something called non-position joints.
Right. A non-position joint, like a simple butt joint, relies solely on glue or fasteners to hold the pieces together.
I see. So dovetails are positioned and butt joints are non-positioned.
Exactly.
Are there other types of position joints?
Oh, absolutely. There's a whole world of joinery out there.
Oh, I bet.
Mortise and tenon joints, for example.
Mortise and tenon. Okay.
Another classic example.
I've seen those.
Yeah.
Like connecting legs to tabletops.
Yeah, you see them a lot in furniture making.
Yeah.
And timber framing.
They're incredibly strong.
Oh, yeah.
And they've been used for centuries.
And there are tons of variations on the mortise and tenon. Oh, I bet.
Each one suited for a specific purpose.
So it's not just about choosing a joint, it's about choosing the right type of that joint.
Exactly.
It's like a whole universe of joinery knowledge out there.
It is. And that's one of the things that makes woodworking so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a craft that blends technical skill, creativity, and a deep understanding of the material.
I can see that. And speaking of technical skill, I'm guessing we need some pretty specialized tools to create those intricate joints.
You bet. You're not going to carve a dovetail with a butter knife.
No, I guess not.
Woodworking requires a wide array of tools, from hand saws and chisels to those powerful machines like the table saw and the bandsaw.
Okay, let's talk tools. The sources mention everything from table saws to miter saws to those intriguing sounding band saws.
It's like a saw family reunion.
It is.
And just like with any family, each member has its unique personality and talents.
Okay, I like that analogy.
So, for example, the table saw.
It's like the workhorse of the wood shop.
Oh, okay.
It's powerful, versatile.
Okay.
You can use it for ripping lumber, cross-cutting boards, even creating those grooves and recesses for joinery.
Okay, so the table saw is like the reliable, steady one you can always count on.
Exactly. Always there to get the job done.
Okay, and the miter saw.
The miter saw.
Yeah, I'm picturing those perfect angle cuts for picture frames and crown molding.
You got it. The miter saw is all about precision. It's your go-to for trim work projects where accuracy is key.
It's like the perfectionist of the saw family.
Exactly. Yeah. Always striving for that perfect cut.
Okay, and what about the bandsaw? It looks kind of like a giant jigsaw to me.
It does, doesn't it? The bandsaw is all about curves.
Okay.
And irregular shapes. It has that thin, continuous blade that runs on two wheels.
Okay.
And this allows you to make these smooth, intricate cuts that you just couldn't do with other saws.
So that's how you create those beautifully curved furniture pieces or those decorative elements.
The bandsaw is incredibly versatile.
Yeah.
You can use it for everything, from cutting those gentle curves to making really intricate scroll work.
So it's like the artist of the saw family.
I like that.
It's the one with the creative flair.
Absolutely.
Okay, so each saw has its own specialty.
Yeah.
Like a team of woodworking superheroes.
They are, each one with its own superpower.
But, with great power comes great responsibility, right?
You got it. Safety is paramount when working with any of these tools, especially those power tools.
Yeah, the sources really emphasize the importance of following safety procedures.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, some of those warnings were a little alarming.
I know what you mean.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of woodworking.
Right.
And forget about the potential dangers.
Exactly. But safety should always be our top priority.
Absolutely. The sources talk a lot about the importance of wearing appropriate clothing.
Right.
Safety glasses.
Yes.
Being alert and focused when you're operating machinery.
Absolutely.
And never removing safety guards without proper authorization.
It's all common sense.
It is.
But sometimes we need those reminders.
Absolutely. It's like those safety briefings you get before a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
They might seem a little bit over the top.
Yeah.
But they're there to ensure that everyone has a fun and safe experience.
Exactly. And it's the same with woodworking.
Okay, safety lesson firmly implanted in my brain.
Good.
But let's get back to the fun stuff.
Okay.
So we talked about preparing the lumber.
Yeah.
To explore the world of joinery. But what about those times when you need to use something other than solid lumber?
You're talking about sheet materials like plywood.
Plywood. It's so versatile and affordable.
Yeah, it's a staple in construction and furniture making.
But I'll admit, I get a little confused about all the different types of plywood.
Oh, yeah.
There's veneer core, lumber core, MDF core.
It's a lot to keep track of.
It's a whole alphabet soup of plywood.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
But let's break it down.
Okay, let's decipher that alphabet soup.
All right. So veneer core plywood. That's the most common type.
Okay.
It's made up of these thin layers of wood veneer.
Okay.
Glued together with alternating grain directions.
And that's what gives plywood its strength and stability, right?
Exactly. That alternating grain direction prevents warping.
Right.
Makes the sheet much stronger than a single piece of solid wood.
Of the same thickness.
Exactly. And the beauty of plywood is that you can get different grades of veneer.
Okay.
Depending on the look and the quality you need.
So if I'm building a cabinet door, I would want to choose plywood with a higher grade of veneer for the face that's going to be visible.
Exactly. You don't want any knots or imperfections showing on the front of your beautiful cabinet door.
That makes sense. Now, what about lumber core plywood?
Lumber core plywood.
Yeah, how's that different?
It has a core that's made of solid strips of wood,
Right.
rather than veneer.
I see.
And this makes it incredibly strong and
Wow.
stable.
So I bet that's the stuff they use for those heavy-duty shelves in workshops and garages.
You got it. Lumber core plywood is perfect when you need that extra strength and rigidity,
Yeah.
like for shelving, tabletops, even structural components.
Okay.
And because the core is made of solid wood, you can shape it
Right.
and route it just like you would with solid lumber.
So it's like a hybrid between solid wood and plywood.
Exactly. The best of both worlds.
Okay. And then we have MDF core plywood.
Ah, yes. MDF core plywood, the smooth operator of the plywood family.
Okay. Why is that?
Because it has a core made of medium density fiberboard, or MDF, which is known for being exceptionally flat
Okay.
and consistent.
And MDF is that super smooth, dense material that they often use for painted furniture, right?
Exactly. And that's why MDF core plywood is perfect for those applications.
Okay.
Because it takes paint beautifully,
Yeah.
creates a really sleek, modern look.
So we've got plywood for strength, plywood for stability,
Yep.
and wood for a smooth finish.
It's like a whole toolbox of options.
It is. It's amazing how much variety there is in the world of wood and wood-based materials.
It really is.
But just when you think you've got a handle on it,
Yeah.
there's always something new to discover.
Right.
Like one of the sources mentioned a material called Formica.
Formica.
Yeah, which is a laminated plastic, often used for countertops and tabletops.
Yeah, Formica. That takes me back.
Oh, me too. Those countertops were practically indestructible.
They are. They're incredibly durable.
Yeah.
And easy to maintain, which is why they've been so popular for so long.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to think about how they fit into this whole spectrum of wood
Right.
and wood-based materials.
Yeah, it's a bit of an outlier.
It is.
But it just reminds us that there's a whole world of materials out there that woodworkers can incorporate.
Absolutely.
So it's like expanding that woodworking palette beyond traditional wood.
Exactly.
And speaking of expanding our horizons,
Okay.
let's dive back into the world of joinery again.
All right. Back to joinery.
We talked about those basic joints like dovetails and mortise and tenon.
Yeah.
But I know there are so many other fascinating and intricate joints out there.
Oh, yeah.
I'm ready to be wowed by the ingenuity of woodworking joinery.
Okay. Prepare to be wowed. Have you ever heard of a butterfly joint?
A butterfly joint.
Yeah.
It sounds beautiful, delicate.
It does sound delicate, but actually it's quite the opposite.
Okay.
The butterfly joint is used to reinforce
Okay.
weak spots in a board, like cracks or knots.
Okay.
It involves inlaying a piece of wood that's shaped like a butterfly
Oh, I see.
into the surface of the board, which adds strength and a little visual interest.
So it's like a decorative bandage for the wood.
Huh. That's a great way to put it.
Okay, and what about a scarf joint? I remember that one from the
A
sources.
scarf joint, yeah.
That's used to join two pieces of wood end to end.
Exactly, to create a longer piece.
Right, and it's often used for tabletops, moldings, beams.
Anything where you need a continuous length of wood?
It's like a seamless extension for the wood.
Exactly. And there are a few different types of scarf joints.
Oh, there.
The simplest one is a straight scarf joint,
Okay.
where you just cut the ends of the boards at an angle, glued
Right.
together.
Okay.
But there are also more complex variations,
Okay.
like the keyed scarf joint
Mm-hmm.
and the splined scarf joint,
Okay.
which just use additional elements like keys or splines to reinforce the joint.
It's incredible how much thought and ingenuity goes into designing these joints.
It really is.
Each joint has its own unique strengths and weaknesses
Absolutely.
and applications.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Mastering of the art of joinery is a lifelong pursuit for a lot of woodworkers.
It's like a secret society of wood joiners,
Huh.
passing down their knowledge through generations.
I love it.
But speaking of passing down knowledge, we haven't really talked much about the tools used to create all these intricate joints.
Ah, yes. The tools of the trade.
Yeah.
Woodworking wouldn't be possible without this wide array of hand tools
Right.
and power tools.
Yeah. Each one designed for its specific purpose.
Okay, let's dive into that toolbox.
All right.
We already talked about saws,
Yep.
but the sources mentioned all these other intriguing tools
Yeah.
like chisels,
Mhm.
planes, routers. The list goes on.
To the lot.
It is. It's enough to make my head spin.
Haha. Well, let's start with chisels.
Okay.
Those quintessential woodworking hand tools.
Chisels.
Yeah, they're used for everything.
Okay.
From shaping, carving the wood, to cleaning up joints and removing waste material.
I've always been a bit intimidated by chisels, too.
Really?
They just seem like they require so much skill and precision.
Well, they do take some practice
Yeah.
to master.
Yeah.
But chisels are incredibly versatile.
Okay.
And really rewarding tools to use. And they come in such a wide range of sizes and shapes.
Okay.
Each one designed for a very specific purpose.
So it's like having a set of, tiny sculptor's tools.
It is. They're like tiny little chisels for very specific tasks.
And then there are planes.
Yeah.
Those elegant hand tools used for smoothing and shaping the wood.
I love planes.
They're so classic.
They are. I picture those old wooden hand planes
Oh, yeah, me too.
that my grandfather used to use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there are also modern planes made of metal.
Oh.
And they come in all sorts of styles and sizes.
I see.
Each one designed for a very specific purpose.
So it's like the evolution of the hand plane.
Exactly. From those classic wooden planes to those sleek, modern metal ones.
It's amazing how woodworking tools have evolved over time.
It really is.
The sources mentioned a technique called scary sharp for sharpening plane blades.
Ah, yes. Scary sharp.
Sounds a little bit intimidating.
It does, doesn't it? But it's a very effective and accessible way to get those razor-sharp blades.
What does it involve?
You're essentially using sandpaper in a flat surface,
Okay.
like a piece of glass,
Uh-huh.
to progressively hone the blade until it's perfectly flat and sharp.
Wow. So no fancy sharpening jigs or grinding wheels required.
Nope. That's the beauty of Scary Sharp.
Okay.
It's simple and it's really effective.
Okay. So we've got our chisels and our planes sharpened and ready to go.
All right.
What other woodworking wonders await us in this magical toolbox?
Well, let's talk about routers.
Routers.
Yeah, those are versatile power tools.
Okay.
That can add a whole new dimension to woodworking projects.
Okay.
You familiar with routers?
I've heard the term, but I'm not really sure what they do.
So a router is essentially a high-speed spinning tool
Okay.
with a cutting bit.
Mm-hmm.
And you use this to shape
Okay.
and hollow out the wood.
Okay.
You can use it to create everything from decorative edges to intricate inlays and dados, which are those grooves that you cut across the grain.
So it's like a tiny, super-powered wood carving machine.
That's a great way to think about it.
Odors sound amazing.
They are. They can do so much.
It's incredible how each tool has its own unique purpose
Yeah,
and capabilities.
they really do.
It's like assembling a team of woodworking specialists.
It is. Each one with its own expertise.
Yeah, and just like with any team, choosing the right tools for the job is so important.
It makes all the difference.
For efficiency, accuracy, and, getting those great results.
Absolutely.
This deep dive into woodworking tools is making me realize there's a whole world of possibilities out there.
There is. It's an amazing world to explore.
It is. But for now, let's shift our focus to something that's equally important,
Okay.
but often overlooked. Safety.
Ah, yes. Safety. We can't emphasize it enough.
No, we can't.
Especially when we're working with power tools
Yeah.
and sharp objects.
Woodworking can be so rewarding,
It is.
but it's crucial to approach it with a healthy dose of caution
Absolutely.
and respect for the tools.
I couldn't agree more.
The sources provided some great safety tips, but I'm curious to hear from you. As an experienced woodworker,
Yeah.
what are some of the most important safety rules that you live by?
Well, for starters, always wear the appropriate safety gear,
Okay.
especially eye and ear protection.
That makes sense.
I can't stress that enough.
I can imagine those flying wood chips are no joke.
They're not. They can cause some serious damage.
Right.
And always make sure that your work area is well lit
No.
and well ventilated.
I've heard that some types of wood dust can even be carcinogenic.
That's right. So it's not just about keeping the sawdust out of your eyes. It's also about protecting your lungs.
Okay. Noted.
What else? Oh, never use a tool if you're tired or distracted.
Okay.
Woodworking requires focus.
Yeah.
And even a momentary lapse in concentration can lead to an accident.
So no woodworking after a long day at the office or a glass of wine, huh?
Huh. That's probably a good rule of thumb.
Okay, so always be alert.
Yes, always be alert.
And what's your final safety tip?
Never be afraid to ask for help
Okay.
or guidance if you're unsure about something.
That's good advice.
There are so many resources available.
Yeah, there really are.
From online tutorials
Yeah.
to experienced woodworkers who are willing to share their knowledge.
Yeah.
Don't be shy.
Yeah.
Ask questions.
It's better to ask a silly question
Right.
than to risk a serious injury.
Exactly.
Okay, safety lesson officially learned.
Good.
So what else can we uncover in these treasure troves of woodworking wisdom?
Well, we've covered a lot of ground, but there's still so much more to explore. Like, we haven't even touched on wood finishing yet.
Oh, right. Finishing.
Yeah.
The final touch.
That's what gives the wood its final look and feel.
Exactly.
Whether it's sleek and modern,
Yeah.
or rustic and weathered.
It's all about the finish.
It's like giving the wood its final wardrobe.
Huh. I like that.
Okay, let's dive into that.
All right. Let's explore the world of wood finishing. Yeah, it really is that final transformation, where a piece of wood just kind of takes on a whole new personality through the art of finishing.
Absolutely. It's like giving the wood its final wardrobe. Whether it's a sleek tuxedo.
Or like a cozy sweater.
Huh?
But I'll admit, I'm a little lost in the world of wood finishes.
Okay.
There are just so many options.
Yeah, there are a lot.
Stains, oils,
Yeah.
varnishes, shellacs.
It can be overwhelming.
It's a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
So let's break it down.
Okay.
What are the key differences between all of these finishes?
Well, let's start with stains.
Okay, stains.
Stains are designed to change the color of the wood,
Okay.
either to enhance its natural beauty or to create a totally different look.
Okay.
And you've got oil-based stains, water-based stains, gel stains.
Okay.
Each one has its own pros and cons.
So it's kind of like choosing a paint color for the wood.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And just like with paint, the choice of stain can really change the mood and the feel of a piece.
That's amazing.
Do you want a warm, rich tone? Or a cool, modern vibe?
Okay.
Or that rustic, weathered look? Stains can help you achieve all of those.
So it's like giving the wood a whole new identity.
It really is. It can completely transform the look of the wood.
Now, what about oils, varnishes, shellacs?
Yeah, those are all about protection,
Okay.
enhancing the wood's beauty,
Okay.
but they do it in different ways.
Okay.
So oils, for example, they penetrate into the wood fibers,
Okay.
nourishing the wood from the inside out. They give it this warm, natural glow.
Okay.
And they're often used for things like furniture, cutting boards, surfaces that come into contact with food.
So oils are like skincare for wood.
Huh. That's a great analogy. They really do nourish and protect the wood.
Okay, and what about varnishes?
Varnishes.
They seem to create a much harder, more durable finish.
You're right. They sit on top of the wood,
Okay.
creating this protective layer that's resistant to scratches, moisture, heat.
Yeah.
And they're often used for things like floors, tabletops.
Surfaces that get a lot of wear and tear.
Exactly.
Right.
Anything that needs that extra protection.
So varnishes are like the bodyguards of the wood finishing world.
Ah, I love that. They're there to shield the wood from the elements.
No, and shellac.
Shellac.
I remember that one.
Yeah, that's a natural resin.
Okay.
It creates a beautiful, warm, amber-toned finish. It's
Got
been
it.
used for centuries, known for its beautiful sheen,
Yeah.
its ability to really bring out the richness of the wood grain.
So shellac's like the vintage dress of wood finishes.
Huh. It is. It adds a touch of elegance and sophistication.
It's amazing how each finish has its own unique personality.
It really is. It's like choosing the right outfit for the wood.
It is. But I imagine that applying all these finishes requires a certain level of, skill and technique.
It does. It's not just a matter of slapping it on.
Right.
Applying finishes properly takes practice.
Yeah.
And patience.
I can imagine.
You need to consider things like surface preparation, type of applicator, the number of coats, even the drying time between coats.
So there's a whole art to wood finishing.
There really is. And for a lot of woodworkers, it's the most rewarding part.
I bet. Seeing that transformation.
Exactly. That final step that brings the whole project together.
This has been so fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see wood in a whole new light.
Me too.
From the moment it's felled in the forest
Yeah.
to that final coat of finish.
It's quite a journey.
It is.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
I know. But before we wrap things up,
Okay.
I have one final thought-provoking question
Right.
for our listeners out there.
Okay, shoot.
With all these incredible woodworking tools,
Yeah.
techniques, materials at our disposal,
Right.
what amazing creations can we envision and bring to life?
That's a great question. The possibilities really are endless.
They are.
We can create functional furniture,
Yeah.
beautiful art pieces, whimsical toys.
Right.
The only limit is our imagination.
So to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to embrace the challenge,
Yeah,
experiment with different techniques,
absolutely.
and never stop learning.
That's the key.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of woodworking.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.
Until then, happy woodworking.